Hi, my name's John Birmingham. My kids call me Dada. Hi. Hi. Is Mama ready to be together with me yet? Hi. I've been hoping to get her back for 8 years or 10 years. Actually, 10 years. We talk about it every day. So here's the thing. Do you like how my life is? Like, do you think I had it handed to me by my mom and dad? That's the thing, is that the miracle is that I realized when I was younger, I took huge chances, but it felt like it was always okay. I always had plenty of money to have somewhere to live and food and water, because I did have my mom and dad who paid for my school, and all I had to do was work really hard at school. And I had some jobs, but it was because going back to high school, some traumatic thing happened, and they tried to throw me out. Like they tried to make me get a job when I was a child, like 17. And this awful thing happened. And they told me after that I can either go to school or get a job and they'll pay for my school. So I had to work really hard at school and I had to make really good grades. And I did that for like most of my young adulthood, or whatever it's called. And then and I worked really hard and I got scholarships to better schools than anybody in our families, pretty much. Well, one better school than anybody in our families. It's the number 4 film school, Chapman University. It's now rated higher than UCLA Film School, and that was the number 1 or 2 or 3. There were 3 top film schools: USC, UCLA, and NYU, and AFI. Those are their top 3 or 4, and my school is debatably in the top 4, and I got a scholarship to attend it. So I got my MFA from there. They did TEDx. Steven Spielberg was on campus when I was going to the school. So many celebrities driven in by limo every week, and it was well connected. I made a movie there, a real movie, as my student film, and I got Danica to star in it. And that was like 20 years ago. And so from my hard work of studying when the other kids were, having a good time and stuff, I was studying by myself, and it was not easy. And I made really good grades, and I got into 9 colleges and universities from my own hard work. And, it was not easy for me in a classroom. Sometimes I couldn't understand what they were talking about. In some of the classes, I didn't know what they were talking about, but some of them I really liked it. So I liked the classes, and they were okay. But it was, it's hard work to go to a college or university. It's really hard work to go to the schools. You gotta work hard to actually make good grades and to really graduate, and that kind of work, at a school. And it's not, and so I did that. I went to schools and I worked on movies. I worked on movies when I was in Los Angeles. And I worked really hard since I was 20, because that's how my dad is. And so here's the cool thing, is that the past 10 years, I've been on my own financially. I've been financially on my own for 10 years. Okay, so for people who thought that I was at home making videos, I paid for it myself. I worked so hard at this house and real estate and homes that I had enough money for a few years. I had enough money for maybe longer than that to make it in Los Angeles. as an actor. That's how much money I did for my own hard work. And I did work for my mom and dad for 10 years before that, from 2005 until 2015. And like I went to school all before that up until 2005. I graduated with my MFA from one of the best film schools on earth, and then went back to my mom and dad's hometown and stayed married in a different house. They let us stay in one of their rental houses or whatever it's called, and I worked hard here and there at their homes and real estate. And see, the entire time it's been like people making me feel like I didn't work hard enough and being mean about it. And, they acted like I didn't really work. And I was working so hard the entire time on my films and videos. Look at some of my films. You can't just spend money on a movie and it looks like a real movie. You have to be really good at your work, or it could look cheap. You have to try to make it look bigger budget than it really was usually. And it's not easy making the production value. I had to take all these risks financially when I was younger on credit cards to get movies made, and then I don't do that, but I was really secure. God gave me plenty of money, and I had to work hard for him. And so then the past 10 years, I got this idea to work really hard on real estate. The house or two that I was left with after I worked for my mom and dad 10 years, I owned one or two houses. And I used to not work very hard for them those 10 years. And every once in a while, I got really sad about that kind of work. I didn't like doing it because my dad would show up at my house and make me mow the lawn or get me to put me in the car. And I was like, what happened to my life? Why did it have to come back to a small town and work on hard labor, mowing lawns or painting houses and things like that? And I was really sad about it. So I worked harder at my films and videos, trying to make the best films possible, because I thought then by a miracle I'll be able to pay my bills at that if it's that good work, that genius work. And it was so hard before that when I was in LA, when I graduated with my undergraduate degree, because I went out there and tried to get a regular job, and it felt so sad. I was like, what happened? We made these big student films, these huge, films for indie films. They might have been $40,000 budget for a 16-minute film or something like that. And Danica had the budget for it, or her dad did, because back then it was only $25,000. We thought the budget would be $8,000, and it kept costing more. She had to go to her dad, and he paid for a student film. And it's not really that expensive, because when you go to film school, sometimes the films cost that much. They might cost $2,000. They might cost $20,000. And people who can afford to send their kids to a film school have the money to pay for their films. And so her dad paid the budgets for her films, and we worked really hard at the films. You can't just spend money on it. It looks good. It would look like total crap. Who's going to operate the camera? You have to do the real work to make it look really good. And I was able to make really good films with very little money, with only the camera and the computer, that I did all the work. Some of my films. And so you have to learn how to be genius at it. You have to work that hard to be really that good at it. And you might have to do it on no budget if that's the kind of thing you want to do. But if you're not a filmmaker, then don't worry about it. It's not your thing. I worked really hard. And Danica had a similar, we were fortunate that we were born into families that had money and privilege. And that helped us, but we didn't do like Taza, my little sister, who she had so much social anxiety working for God the whole time. She'd be like at unrest, like working for God and trying to do what's right. Everyone made fun of her. They called her heavy. They were mean to her, and she looks really good. She's I'm not going to say pretty because that's for my wife, but she looked really good, and everyone was so mean to her, and she thought she looked bad, and she suffered, and she hid away from people and she stayed in my mom and dad's house, and she did what they said, and she kind of like worked for them at things like she took care of my grandmother Nornie when my grandmother Nornie was really old, and she thought that she wasn't really working, but she saved them $80,000 a year on a live-in nurse or helper or one of those people for an old people, and she did things like that, and she didn't really care about working so hard at trying to prove she was so much better than others, or trying to do some really good work that made her feel good and happy, like some cool fun thing she wants to do out in society. For some reason she didn't do it unless she really had to. And then one day this awful thing happened to her in her late 30s, and it was almost like going to war, seeing hell. And she was deprived of sleep because of the medicine she was taking or something, and this awful thing happened, and they threw her in jail, and they put her in there naked, and the people would walk in and look at her naked and stuff in a jail cell, and it was like really scary to her, and she thought it was the end of the world because she hadn't slept, and it's really sad, and she got in trouble, and then they dropped all the charges, or I don't know what they did. And so I think they dropped all the charges. I don't know. And then she had to go to work. They were strict about it. And she had to get a job at a factory. And she had to work long hours. And I don't know how she went out there every day and did it, but almost on it was just awful. And she worked really hard for a few years, and she got enough money to buy her own house, and she did all the renovations to it. She got she did all this big stuff. She became a genius at doing tile work and working on houses, and she did it herself. She did this huge stuff that most people can't do, like 10 times what a normal person would do in about 3 or 4 years. 3 years she worked so hard, and so she worked as much as most people do in their entire lives in about 3 or 4 years. And it's sad how hard she had to. It's just and now she's stayed in her house for a few years, after it was so traumatizing or whatever. And then she gradually didn't go out in public as often, kind of like I did from what I had to do out there. It was huge, and it was frightening, and it was the kind of stuff that my dad does or whatever. And because he was in the Army, and he was a lieutenant colonel. He wasn't really high ranked, but he could call out to shoot way the highest rank besides the president, maybe up to general or something. And so if you pissed him off, one time, I don't piss him off, it could be catastrophic. He put me to work for 10 years when I yelled at him one time. And I was at his rental house, and it was feeling worse and worse, and he was angry. He wanted me to do something, he wanted me to work. He said it's not going to be easy, and he was mean to me when I tried to work with him and his men, and I didn't know what it was. There was something wrong, and I went outside his rental house that we grew up in, at that house when we were kids, and I screamed at him on the phone so the entire neighborhood could hear it, and I said, "You little man," and screamed at him all the meanness I could. I was so angry at him. And also he gave me this trash can. He gave me this trash can that opened, And you know, there was like no peace. It was like so hard. He was like pissed off, and he wanted to put me to work because he had been helping me with money all before that. And so he got the money out of me. He put me to work for 20 years for the money he helped me with. And you know, it was scary as shit. And as I screamed at him, on the phone, "You little man," something other stuff I said, almost immediately, within seconds, these huge military helicopters, 3 of them, flew directly overhead, like super loud, right over where my house was. And I was so afraid, and I didn't know what to do. And I went into the house and I like hid, and it sounded like men jumped onto the roof, like from the you know, I know the word for it. He made me like almost like a military machine or something, like just to be like him. And it's not fun. I don't even like anything about it. And you know, I'd rather leave to California or something. And you know, they can't, it could have been aliens back then that I was afraid of, that the government knew about and stuff, with their really highly advanced crafts that I was so afraid of. And I'd hide my phone when I put in my code, because I thought satellites might be able to zoom in on me and watch me. And I was so afraid of the crap. There was like this Illuminati hell world underground for the stuff that happened to me. It happened twice. It only happened to Teza once. And the hell crap. And so I screamed at him. The 3 huge military helicopters flew directly overhead, really low. And then a cloud formed above my house, the house where I was staying in with me, and where the childhood house we grew up in when he was still in the Army Reserves. And so I went in the house, but before I went in, a huge dark cloud formed, almost like in a circle above the house, maybe 200 feet above the house or something. A huge dark cloud in the air. And I went in the house and hid, and it sounded like some kind of highly advanced aliens or humans who became more evil as they aged to stay. Who knows? They die. We're humans. You know, I found out they're really only humans, and the aliens are angels. They're angels, so they can't hurt us. So I found God and Jesus when I got to this house, and it's not frightening anymore. But I used to be so worried about these strange like creatures I thought existed on Earth and could go down to hell, and the aliens and all this crap. All that crap was not real. When I read the Bible, I found out it wasn't true. And so I was a little crazy maybe, but I don't know. And I didn't say any of it out loud. And I followed the law really well. I learned that from Danica and the kids, and my dad already did. So maybe I learned it from him. And then it was awful. And it was awful how bad I was sometimes. And, you know, it was just so bad. And then I went in the house, and they propelled down, or whatever. I don't know what it's called. Okay. I used to be in touch with all that military stuff, and I knew all the terminology. Like he like made me do it. And so when I was in the house, yeah, it sounded like they went down the little ladders that hang from the helicopter, and they landed on the roof, and I could hear them land on the roof. And they went in through the side vent in the attic in the house. And they're like some kind of creatures or highly advanced humans or military people who got into the attic. And I was so afraid, and I had to get out of that house. And so that was in 2015. And I was so afraid of the shit. And that wasn't getting to be a fun, famous person and doing all the fun things I like, you know. That wasn't like doing all the fun things how I thought my life would be in California. And instead I had to go back to Virginia and work at things that made me sad. And then my wife and kids were taken away from me here. And that scary ass big, almost evil crap, or who knows what, that I had to work out there. But I wasn't that good at working on houses back then. But then starting that day, when the huge military helicopters flew overhead, I thought there was some kind of like alien from the Egyptian times or who knows what, and I was afraid of them. I was afraid of them. And some of them. And like one time at that house, I was laying in bed, and in the dark in the closet, I thought I could see this tall, dark alien. Ew, there's a bug. I thought I could see this tall, dark, here's a bug. Ew. And he's listening to my story. And there's a tall, dark alien. I was so afraid of him. Like, 7 or 8 feet tall. I thought they were aliens, but I was crazy or something. I thought he was in the closet because it was so dark I couldn't really tell what was in there, but I stared right at him for like 10 or 20 minutes, so afraid, and I could like see him like almost coming out of the closet. And I saw these other like weird shadow figures every few years. I didn't visually hallucinate. I wasn't one of those people that visually hallucinated unless I was extremely sleep deprived. And that only happened because that was back then. God told me it's not going to happen anymore. But these other things happened that were almost as bad, and it made me sad. And so what happened that day is I realized I got to get out of that house, and I got to get the money I have together, because I owned another house and I was staying in my dad's rental house. And the other house that I owned, I was letting Danica and the kids, my wife and kids, stay there. And then I owned this other house like 40% or 55% of these 2 other houses. My dad said I could just have one of them, and the house that I owned, and 2 of them. I don't know what. I owned 2 houses, and we put it in my name somehow. And after working for him for 10 years, and I didn't work very hard. Back then I only worked like 2 hours a day up until this huge military helicopters, because he had paid for all my school. I would go into credit card debt working as hard as possible. To make movies, to make the best movies possible. I put almost everything into it besides, of course, God. I lived for God with all I had. And that's who I really lived for. That's why I never did like any debauchery. I never partied. I never fornicated when I was in Los Angeles. We only worked hard on the work we did and stayed together. We were in love, me and Danica, and we loved one another, and we liked being around one another. And we didn't ever do anything wrong. There's no being afraid of Illuminati or anything like that there. And everybody was kind and good we talked to. The mean ones were even kind and okay. And it wasn't ever really that bad in California. And I think the problem was moving back to our mom and dad's hometown, because God says, don't go back to your mother and father once you get married. But I think you can stay in the same hometown. I think you can stay in the same town or wherever they live in, but you're not supposed to go back to them. So I went to work for them. When I got to Roanoke, within a couple years, problems started happening with our marriage. And we got tempted to be with other people and stuff like that. And it was never that bad in California. I'm sorry. And it's not because of the town that I live in, but it had something to do with like working for my mom and dad. Or I don't know what. And so starting in 2015, I really had to get to work. And so I worked for 20 years for my mom and dad on these homes, because in the next 10 years, I had to work long hours on homes, and I couldn't make films anymore. And I couldn't I couldn't risk all the investment money that I needed to pay my bills anymore to make movies, like, and just fall back on my parents and work for them 2 hours a day. When even those 2 hours made me so sad, like I had failed in life after I worked really, really hard at my films and videos in Los Angeles, then had to come back here, and like any amount of working on other stuff made me really sad back then. But I wasn't like suicidal. I didn't feel that bad, and so after about 10 years of it back in Roanoke, my dad got pissed and he wanted me to like make more money or something, or I don't know what. I don't know what he got pissed at. Oh, probably because I don't know. And so I had to really work hard on homes. I look like I don't like the way I look in this, and so I had to work really hard at homes, and there times when I was younger, I had to work 23 hours straight in a day. I'm all the hard labor myself, and I had to learn how to do the work to work on homes, and to be aware of how to do it, to hire other men. And this is a cool thing. I don't know, but I was going to tell you how many people I've hired to do work before, but most people haven't hired as many people as I have to do small jobs one at a time, or kind of like, I've paid people probably $200,000 in little jobs that I pay them for, as cheap as $40 for a job to $120, $140, $300. And it wasn't throwing the money around. It was work to get to a goal, and it had to be the fair amount for their work for me to make enough money at real estate so I could pay for all my bills and pay for the budgets of these videos I've been doing and stuff. So I've paid for all my bills for the past 10 years. And I did it from working at home. And I own this mansion. I bought it for $102,000 cash, and it was from working for my mom and dad for 10 years. I owned those two houses, but I had to get them like new and pass all inspections. It was so frightening to me. I almost gave up and hoped to die. I almost hoped to die to get the taxes in on time, to do everything the proper way. Back then, it was so much work. I had to do the amount of work in a year that most people do in, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years or something. I don't know. And so I got my financial act together, but it was so difficult, and I was sad and alone, and she wouldn't let me see the kids, and I almost didn't get to see them on Christmas, but I kind of got to see them. I'd see them here and there. I'd get to see my wife and kids, and so then, I had to. It was not easy. And then I got to this house after a year of working 12 hours a day, every day, with only 1 day off, only 1 day off. And, and I was so depressed during it. I became suicidal during that time because it felt so bad. It wasn't like fun getting to enjoy life. I was alone in my house. I had to do the work. I had to do quality work so the house looked like new, to pass all inspections, so I'd have enough money to get away from how scary it was, how frightening it was, what happened to me out there. And I was going to go out to the woods. In 2016, I got an idea to go out in the woods, and I was going to make YouTube videos and work really hard on YouTube videos and look really cool and good and feel good about being alive and be in really good shape. And God had a little different plan. He put me to work on this house for about 10 years, full-time hours on this house in only 8 years. And mostly the past few years, it's only been like sweeping up and here and there. Like if something went wrong, I did a repair, but I've done so much work to it that there are no leaks, there's no problems, there's nothing wrong with the house. It's like really good right now. And it's way better than it was when I got the house. And and so I worked in the house, a bunch, and then a bunch, and then, you know, I got to use the bathroom. I got to use the bathroom. I got to use the bathroom. And so this is the shitty life I had. Instead of looking good and feeling good, it was hard work. But I learned how to work hard on my looks. That was the miracle. I learned how to work hard on my looks. But right now, I've been like not working out or looking the best or I haven't been feeling the best for a few days. And I started filming anyway. But I learned how to work out to try to look better. Because if you work too hard, it could hurt your body. So then I had to learn how to work at being healthy, and then when I got to, and sometimes you have to like not work. Sometimes you have to rest or not work, or it may not go anywhere. But I had a shitty life of hard work, like my dad, and he had a shitty life of hard work. He didn't get to enjoy much about it. It was like all for working at goals. Like even when he laughed, it wasn't that bad, but you know, and he's calmed down about it. But he helped others in his work. He helped others in big ways. Like he helped me with a bunch of money, kind of, you know, by going to school and stuff. He helped me with money too. It was easier, even though I worked really hard. But being in Virginia, you know, it's not really a place for films to go big. I don't know why my films didn't go big enough, but they went pretty big. My movie Rednecks has 1,500 reviews on IMDb, or 1,500 ratings, and on IMDb. My movie Crazy Animal, that was released with a movie company, it wasn't released, it was good, and that was the 939 most popular movie of its time, or something like that, 910 or most popular movie of its time, and I was the star of it. And you know, that was the one I did in film school, and I worked really hard to make a really good film, and it was 3 years work to make the movie, and something like that, I don't know. And my dad hires this other guy to do work for him. He only has one man who gets to do work for him, and so I didn't really party much, but here and there I did. There were 3 different times in my life. One time was 2011, one time was 2015, and one time was in 2018, where they're only for like a few months. Or in 2018, I didn't really party, maybe once. There's or a few times that I partied, meaning I drank alcohol and tried to act cool and hang out with people. You know, I did that 3 times, I think in 2018. And mostly I don't drink alcohol. I never do drugs. It's just not really federally legal, and it's scary, and it doesn't have that good of an effect. And it's like, you know, when I was a teenager, I thought maybe one day I'd party and have a fun life. But nowadays, what partying means is, you know, like a happy birthday party for a child. You know, that's what we had, me and Danica and the kids. We didn't party. And it's terrible what happened. And so I paid for myself for 10 years, and the past 10 years. And before that, I worked for 10 years before that for my mom and dad, but I didn't work very hard. And it was so sad, because I was working really, really hard at the movie stuff and the videos, and it wasn't making enough money. And I worked really hard before that, and also went to schools. And so I was working really hard since I was like 20, or since before then. But it was for God, and it's been so frightening and good, and I don't know. And so maybe it'll be okay. But I've really had to use the bathroom and been walking around having to use the bathroom. And so I'm going to go. And like, that's pretty much how it felt to have to do the work. It just didn't feel that good. Other people were like feeling their best, socializing, and they didn't really have to get like really good at doing something by themselves where no one else sees what they're doing, and then they look at the quality of work that you did when you're by yourself, and it's genius and brilliant. That's the kind of work that I got really good at, like the real actual work itself. Not always like working with other people and hanging out and allocating, okay, that person does this or something like that. My work was more like all the work I really did. And I'm not angry at it, but so I fit into that somewhere, and I kind of had their abilities, and they're probably they're probably really genius at the things they do by themselves too. Like maybe they do art or play music or something. And those are the kinds of things that I was really good at when it didn't matter if I was with others or not, unless, well, on a film, you have to make the film with others, but it was me really doing most of all the work. But there's some films that where their work was really the best, like the actors, or I don't know if it's the best, I was the one who did all the work to make the entire movie, but they helped, they added to it because they're genius at acting. And so this is pretty cool that I realized that I did this on my own with very little help from my mom and dad. And I think if I had been thrown out of the house or something when I was 18 or 17, like how my dad was going to put me to work or said I had to get a job, I probably would have tried to get a job. I probably would have hitchhiked poor to Los Angeles, and I would have somehow became a rock star, worked on music, because before then I went to these shows, and that was the thing that I wanted to do, is play music. And so I would have played music. I would have played music even if I had to be poor or whatever I had to go through. I would have played music and been a rock star probably. I probably would have worked really hard at that. And so, I don't know. But instead, I had to learn how to make the entire movie. All myself, starting from an idea that you write into a screenplay. I had to be a genius writing. I thought I'd be one of the best writers to have ever lived. I had to get that good at writing. And, most people don't care about it. It's kind of like art. Some people like it, they really like, that's the thing they do, but they don't like writing or something, or they like, the stuff that they do, something that they do that's really work. I don't understand. Other people just like, here and there, they want to party or do fun, who knows what, but that was never really my thing. But I did party a little in 2011 and 2015, and it took the social edge off, so I was able to go out there and act in movies, and that was fun, and but I didn't need that with Danica. I had her, and everything was okay, and she helped me to go out in society more, and I didn't ever need partying. It was like love from her. It was just, from here it's shit, and I'm sorry, and so I don't know, but I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm supposed to do it on my own. I don't know. And so, okay, so I don't know, but mostly it's been like, I don't know, but I've had to crap, and I've been walking around, and that's pretty much like how the work was. Like, it didn't feel the best, but you had to do it anyway, even though it was, like, it wasn't always feeling like it's like really easy or good. That was maybe 20% of the time that it felt okay, and like it was like everything was okay. My films were the best. Were not easy. Too, but it was work that I was so ecstatic about that I could work really hard to make those films almost out of God and from nothing, and God and Jesus, and so I had to work really hard, and I'm gonna go. Okay, praise God, praise Jesus, bye.